Welcome one and all to the second of 3 tournament reports today. This time it's the Manchester DreadBall Cup from WoFCon 2019. And as you can see from the thumbnail here, I am playing the Orcs or the Marauders or whatever you would like to call them. And to guide you through this juicy quest for glory, I'm going to pop into the corner of the screen right now. Hello there and welcome. So, you can cast your mind back a full year to the previous WoFCon Manchester DreadBall Cup. You may remember that I reigned supreme on that particular evening with the Z's. And the Z's have since gone into a temporary retirement with a 100% tournament win rate. A tournament game win rate, that is. They did manage to finish second at another tournament despite winning 100% of the games. So, recently I've been switching up the teams a bit, and this time it's the Orcs. So, into game one. Now, before I delve too much into game one, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rules of the tournament. And also, this game was actually streamed on the Weight of Fire Facebook page. I think it is. If you go and look for that, then you could find the entire game. I haven't had a look at it myself, so I don't know what the audio is like on there. But feel free to check it out. So if you wish to pause this and go and delve into that yourself, then go nuts. Okay, so the scoring for this DreadBall tournament are very different from any others that I've attended. So normally you get a set amount of points for a win, a draw. Sometimes you'll get a bonus if it's a landslide win or something like that. And then they use things like kills and fan checks as tiebreakers. However, in this event, fan checks and kills and all that juicy stuff, that would earn you a set number of credits. Winning the game or drawing the game would also get you a set number of credits. So it was all pooled in together. So you could potentially not win any games, but kill all the opposing players and generate a zillion fan checks per game and still win the tournament. I haven't looked at the exact maths of it, but I think it's possible to win the tournament without winning a single game, which is an interesting way of doing it. I know it's very deeply controversial. Some people weren't very pleased with the scoring system. Some people were more than thrilled though, because they felt it maybe suited their play style. Because there are some people who aren't that concerned about using the ball at all, just want to smash lots of face. And my team is kind of in that camp. It's somewhat beneficial to the way I was planning to play the Orcs, because killing people is what they do best, arguably, with the big Orc guards that are really juicy with their strength of 3+, and they can just kick all different kinds of human or alien butts. So there's potential for me to get lots of bonuses for killing people. The Goblin Jacks are also good in this edition with their ability to score more points than they were able to do before. And another nifty trick, when fan checks, not only useful in the game itself for generating extra cards and coaching dice, they're also useful to score the credits in the tournament scoring system in this one. So they have a little ability where it's others models can do it as well, but they're especially good at it. If you can pull off a triple dash, which they are good at because they dash on a 3+ and they're jacks, they get the extra dice for it. So it's very possible for them to do it. Every time they do that, it generates a fan check. So I wasn't consciously thinking about that early in the tournament, but then once I did it the first time and got a fan check, then I just thought, okay, when I'm doing anything with these guys, why don't I just triple dash to do everything? And it is going to fail occasionally, but it's also going to create a lot of fan checks. So let's see how that goes. And game number one, as you can see here, I'm against the Judwan, which are a team of strikers who do have the ability to hurt you, though, because they can feint, kind of dance around you and cause you to fall over and hurt yourself somehow. So they are capable of doing damage, despite the fact they're all strikers, but of course they're very good with the ball, very good at passing and scoring, and anything involving the ball, basically, is their tea. And you can see my setup here. This is mainly going to be my standard strategy with the Orcs, which I haven't used for many years. I haven't used them once in this edition. So the strategy I thought of sounded good to me, is keep the game going as long as possible, prevent the opponent from scoring any 3 or 4 pointers to stretch the game out, and then try and kill their players over the first few turns, and then towards the end of the game, try and score some points. So with that in mind, let's bring this arrow onto the screen. Oops, we don't want to move that, we want to move the arrow, don't we? There we go. So you can see that I've got 3 jacks defending at the back here. And especially for a team like the Dread, they only have 6 players, no subs. So as soon as they start losing any players, it's going to be a bit difficult for them to do anything about this here. So most of the time they're going to be scoring 2 pointers, which is okay with me because it's going to take multiple turns for them to even get close to winning, especially if I'm managing to score at the same time. And it also means that they can't commit players to defense if they're doing this as well, especially once 1 or 2 have been killed. So they have to leave this area open. So they can defend the 4-pointer, but my aim is to, whenever possible, try and score from these hexes here. Because whichever goblin I'm using to score, because there's 3 of them used up there, and I want 2 guards on the pitch. You can see where they are at the moment. They're just going to be running around killing people. That's their only concern. Who can they kill and how fast can they do it? And this guy here, whichever goblin isn't guarding this area, he's just going to be trying to score. You can see I've gone for a 2-pointer here, but what I've discovered as this went on, having played them for the first time in a long time, is that these 2 hexes here are going to be your best friend as a goblin. Because when the ball is put into play by the enemy, or after they've scored, should I say, and the ball is launched into play, if it lands here, here, or here, that's where you want it really, because when you're in one of these hexes, you can then move back here, and then you can do a triple dash onto the ball to pick it up, which is pretty easy to pull off with a goblin compared to most other of the teams in the game. So, and then when you pick it up, hopefully you can double that, which means you can then do exactly the same thing back to that hex, because it's 8 hexes away and you can move 5, and then with a triple dash you can get back and forth there. So with one action you can get all the way there, pick it up, and all the way back, which leaves you your second action to take a shot for 3 points. So that is the strategy I'm going to try to use for most of this tournament. But in this game I've obviously gone for a 2-pointer there. And it depends on the circumstances though. If you start losing players or you have to move players from other positions, then you'll be looking for other things. But that is the main strategy I'm going to be going for. If this guy is to get killed, then one of these goblins would run out and take his place, and this one would just come off the bench and plug up the hole in the defense again. So that's the overall strategy. And you can see that in this game I'm actually behind at the time of this picture there, and we're not very far in though at this point. So the reason this guard would be there, most likely, is that he's been involved in a bit of a scuffle. So look at that, there's been a death already though. Killed 1 player. And one of my guards has been injured by a Dread though, which is quite embarrassing. And there's that little defensive lineup I was talking about. So there is an opposing player there, but he's not been able to get them out of the way. And look, another death. So I'm just smashing all kinds of face. Every time there's an opportunity, just crunch, try and smash somebody. If possible, they're going to be trying to dodge out the way of it anyway. So it's not as big a deal whether you hit them in the front facing or the rear facing. But of course, there is the the -1 for attacking someone in the rear. So there's how it looks as we go into this portion of the game here. We're in the 8th rush at the moment, and I have a slight lead. You can see I've got a goblin in this hex here who's recently scored, and the Dread are actually heading up there trying to stop him. There's only 2 Dread on the pitch at the moment. One of them's down and one of them is standing here with a goblin behind him. And the 2 guards are just running around causing all kinds of havoc now. I mean, one of them's down, but oh well. And there comes a point in the game, I believe it's right here, where there are no Dread at all on the pitch, because I've killed 3 of them and injured the other 3. So my opponent is forced to forego an entire turn and not do anything because there's just no players on the pitch. So that is the dream scenario for the Orcs. And you can see I've been building up a bit of a lead. I may have scored a 4-pointer there at one stage. The DreadBall, they are good at scoring, but with this defensive setup, I'm only allowing them to get 2 pointers, and then I can score big scores with my player here and just go around killing everybody. So, one of them is back in the action here, one of the DreadBall, obviously. But he is the MVP, that's why there's a close-up of him. He's been scoring all the points, this number 4. And it's currently 3-0. But you can see they've got more players on the pitch now, trying to get in a position to score. One here. So what he's going to have to do is attempt to shift one of my players off this area and then score to get 3-pointer to get a tie. And looks like some live action here as a DreadBall is being moved with that human hand that's a bit blurry. Gets down here, tries to get rid of one of my players off that spot so someone could score from there, maybe throw the ball to this guy, but unfortunately can't do it. So that is the end of that game. So that is a win in game 1, and that went very, very well. And not only was it a win, it was also a vast amount of fan checks. I think I got about 14 fan checks, so that's bonus credits in the scoring system for this. And that amount of fan checks alone is worth possibly almost the same as getting a win. Not to mention the 3 players that were killed. So it's almost like getting 3 wins in one with the way that I was able to get that game done. So very, very nice start. Game 2 against the Matsudans. Now these are not going to be quite as easy to take out. Because of course they're very tough, much like the Orc Guards. But they're also surprisingly good with the ball, I found. These guys. So we have, you can see I've got the same defensive setup here. I'm going for a similar strategy. We'll see if it works against these guys though, because I haven't used the Orcs very often in this game at all, i.e. that last game was the first game I'd had with them in maybe 5 or 6 years even. Then I haven't really got a set outline of different strategies in my brain for going into games with them. So I'm sure I'll develop more with them if I use them in future events or just play other games with them, friendly games. And you can see that there's a bit of a battle line here, but because I only commit 2 guards into this area, they are kind of outnumbered by all these big walking meat bags. So it's not ideal for winning a fight against a team that can fight back, this setup. It's going to stop the big scores, but I'm not sure whether that's the best thing to do against this particular opposition. But again, I'm getting goblins into that spot, that hex I was talking about, so if the enemy are blocking the 4-pointer, you're just trying to score 3-pointers repeatedly. Because with the goblin here, even if, for example, they get knocked down, what you would hope to do is then get up and double your getting up roll to give you a free action, which you could then use to run back to the center. So at the moment, I am behind in this game. And I've not done much, there's not been much successful murder yet. You can see I've got a couple of injured players there, or they may have been sent off for fouling. You can see there is a bit of an injury crisis going on over there for the Matsudans, but they do have a fair few players out there still. You can see that there's a big unguarded area on both sides. And we're about halfway through the game at this point. And just sitting on these hexes, it prevents, as long as you don't get moved from there, you're preventing the bonus point being scored, and you're also in a position where you can threaten the middle. If you're right back here, you're harder to shift from that point if your opponent wants to score into this area, but you're also further away from the action if you need to get involved. So if you're somebody like the Z's and you don't care, and you will have seen my Z tactics before, just camp everyone as far back as possible, preventing the strikes, then the enemy have to advance really far into your half to move you. And even then it's not easy. But if you're lower in numbers and you need players to be involved in the game, then this is a decent spot for them, so they can leave that area and come in and fight. And overall, there's not as much carnage in this game. I'm not able to get as much done with the guards as against the Dread one, but it's a much more even fight when it comes to these two big monsters going at each other. And you can see I'm falling further behind on the scores at the moment. It's not going very well. And that is going to be how that one ends. That one is going to be a loss, but I got a reasonable amount of fan checks in there. In the end, I just wasn't able to dominate as much in the middle and take out the opposing players with just 2 guards, because the Matsudan are pretty tough in their own right. Even the jacks were able to get stuff done. So I wasn't able to kick as much butt, and I'll need to adapt something different for a team like this next time. Now, game 3, I'm up against the Corporation, the vanilla humans. Some would say the blandest of the bland. However, they have got a bit of a boost in this edition with their jacks becoming better, just like everyone's jacks. So, initially, I'm the away team here. And I haven't set up the Orcs as an away team before. And I made a little bit of a mistake. You could say it's a big mistake, putting everyone too close to halfway, essentially, so that the enemy are able to use 2 actions to get behind and then slam my guards. I was a bit too confident in their ability to survive a rear slam, because if anything, I was thinking maybe tempt them to use 2 actions going for a rear slam on one of my guards, because they're not exactly slow. They're still dodging on 4, and then they've got their armor to fall back on, and they're a guard, so what's the worst that could happen? Maybe they fall down. But unfortunately, it didn't go that way, and they actually got some quite serious injuries out of it. I think I did some pretty poor armor rolls, so a bit over-reliant on that. So that'll be something to learn from for next time as well. So you can see one of them gets a triple injury very early on. I've got another one on the bench, so I'm not too concerned. But every time you have to bring someone off the bench, then you're having to use more actions to move players into the position you want them, because they're way back here, far away from the fun. You can see I do get something done, but whenever I knock down the Corporation players, my opponent is having much more success with his armor rolls than I am with mine, or than I did in the first turn anyway. And you can see I'm going for exactly the same strategy here with the Goblin, just going for 3 pointers and then triple dashing back to halfway to pick the ball up again the next turn, constantly trying to score 3 points over and over and over and over. And we have got some injured players though, and one of them is dead, in fact. A dead Orc Guard. I don't remember whether he actually died or whether he was sent off. He may have been sent off, actually. So I committed a foul, and it was a very heinous one, and he was just spotted easily by the referee and gone. But I do get a kill as well. This striker is dead, so there's another player kill. That's going to get me some nice juicy points. And here, I actually managed to get a 4-pointer attempt by the looks of it. And yep, so I can tell you what happens at the end of this game. So do we have a bit of a wide shot of the pitch? Okay, here's what happened at the end of the game. So my opponent was 4 points up and I only had 1 rush left. So the only way to get a draw out of this game is to score a 4-pointer, and this is the setup I was looking at. So in order to achieve this, with my number of actions, I had to sprint a guard all the way down to this end of the pitch. I then intentionally committed a foul, moved around the back of this guy into this hex here. This is a, I think that's a guard. It might be a jack. Yeah, it's a jack actually. A jack guarding this area. So into the rear of the jack with a guard committing the foul. I'm not sure whether I killed him, but I did a serious injury on him to get him out of play. Then the player who did that was sent off and taken out of the game, if I remember correctly. And, well, there's just the dead pile. And then, or it may have been just this player was nudged out the way and that was it. So this guard was put here to defend against the possibility of something like this happening. But my guard that came around here landed there, pushed this player out the way, didn't follow him into the hex and was then sent off. So I didn't injure him, but I did kill a player earlier. And then the jack here got the ball, brought it to this spot, and shot straight down the middle and scored a 4-pointer. In order to get to that area, that was when I had to dance from here with my triple dash back to the halfway to get the ball, and then come back and then score. So it was not the most unlikely series of things that could happen, but it wasn't a guarantee by any means. So I had to get the 4-pointer in the final turn to salvage a draw out of that one. And I would have picked up quite a few points for that. There were several fan checks and obviously a kill as well. So that was quite a tasty one. The initial placement of my team was quite poor though. So lots to learn. And look at that. Managed to get it back even. And there's how it looked at the end of the game. So when you see that the game's ended before the end, that just means that the round timer was called before all the turns were done. So they usually just say, okay, 15 minutes left, just make sure you end after the away team have had their turn, so you've had the same number of turns. So that was that. It's a draw. Moving on, and this is against the Rebs. Dicey guys in the chat, hello there. Now, I struggle with a strategy against this. Any team that can just push you out the way without really having to do anything, especially the Rebs. I think these big guys, these big monstrosities that look a bit giraffe-like, can just push you away without even having to roll any dice. And then there's the psychic team that can push you, but at least they have to roll for that. These guys can just push you out the way, and that's that. So I struggled to come up with a decent defense against that. So I tried to modify my existing strategy with that in mind, rather than abandoning it completely, which I could have done. I could have thought, you know what, they're going to score. I'm not going to stop them from clearing my defense. It's not possible because they can just push me without even trying. So instead of packing players in here, how about just having 3 guards on from the start and just try and kill everybody that can score, so that there's nothing they can do about it. So that's something to think about next time. But I tried to modify my existing tactic instead. And the frog striker can jump over my players into this spot here. And the reason I've left that open, even though he can do that, is because I would like him to try that. Because rather than my players being pushed out the way and the opposing team scoring from here, and then being really close to halfway to get back to collect the ball and come back and do it again, what I want the frog to do is jump over and try and score a 3-pointer. And then at least he's stuck really far in my half, and it's going to be a bit difficult for him to get all the way back there. So that's my thinking, at least. We'll see whether that turns out to be of sound mind. My opponent wanted to have his picture taken with his army, looking menacing. And better be careful not to get too close to the table. You could sweep up all kinds of miniatures in that beard there. And there's his team. I like the nice clear colour coding on the bases, so you can see what kind of player each one is. So the green would be the strikers, the yellow would be jacks. There are 2 different kinds of jacks, and the red would be guards. I think there's a guard right at the back. So what I end up doing is just trying to crowd this area, and I'm not sure it's the best strategy against this team. You can see it's not going too badly because they're down, but I'm not having that much success with killing in this game either. And you can see again, I've got the goblin in his usual spot. Best place to be. Anyone who's playing as a team that has jacks with a good ability to dash, great place to be. Unless you're against a team that's using the triple wall to defend at the back there. So you can see at the moment I'm down on the scores, and we're about halfway in. And that is actually the final picture. So I'll have to tell you what happens, because the tournament was running so long, because it was a very long day, 4 games of Dead Zone and 4 games of Dreadball, and there's lunch and presentations and all sorts of things in the time allocated. So it was running very, very late by this point, I think, and the shop was about to close in a small number of minutes, so we weren't able to get anywhere near finishing our game. So we were told we had about 10 minutes at one point, and we weren't anywhere near halfway through the game at that point. So I think for my final rush, I only had about 20 seconds before all dice had to be put down in the entire room so they could get the scores done quickly. So all I was able to do really was just run and try and pick up the ball and then try and shoot and get a draw out of it. That was the only thing that was possible, if I remember correctly. However, the dice roll, he didn't succeed in picking up the ball, so that was all I did. So I didn't use all my actions in the final rush because there was no time left. And looking at the rankings at the end of the tournament, if I had maybe one more minute, then it's possible that I could have actually jumped up a place in the table. Because with my Goblin Jacks, knowing it was the last turn, I wouldn't need to leave them in this position. I could just move them around and go for triple dashes to try and generate fan checks to maximise the amount of credits I had. And I had enough actions to do it. It just depends whether the dice rolls had succeeded. If I'd managed to do that with 3 goblins in the last turn, then I would have actually jumped up a place in the table. But obviously I didn't know that at the time, and I only had 20 seconds regardless, so it doesn't matter now. And it didn't matter then either, because I wouldn't have had time to do it unless I'm some kind of dice rolling machine, and I could have just rolled them all into different containers and then looked at the results afterwards, or simultaneously, like some kind of cyborg. I don't think that was possible. So I think 4 games of Dead Zone in an evening, when the shop is closing at a reasonable hour, is probably a stretch. I think perhaps, I'm not sure whether there's any particular blame to lay on either the venue or organisers or whatever. I think that would be a bit harsh. But some games perhaps were running over earlier in the day. And obviously, because the shop's not about to close, there's going to be more leniency, and they'll be, okay, well, you can have an extra 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, in the final game, you don't have that luxury because the shop has to actually close. So I would say be more strict throughout the day rather than in the final game. So you've still got time to make sure the final games are finished, because that's where the placings are ultimately going to be decided, I would say. That would be my advice anyway. It didn't hugely cost me because I wasn't actually going to win this game, because I failed the dice roll in the final turn and I had time to do that. Although if we had time for more turns, who knows what would have happened. But anyway, moving on. So that was the final image. Let's get rid of the arrow. So as a result of all that carnage and all the murder I committed, in the last game I think I got 15 fan checks and killed a player, to go with all the bazillion fan checks I had earlier. So I think in total I ended up with about 45 fan checks, which is worth a huge number of points. And I killed 5 players, I think, during the course of the tournament, which was enough to finish 4th. And I think I was 25 credits below 3rd place, and you get 10 credits for a fan check, if I'm remembering this rightly. Which means that if I'd got a few more fan checks, then I would have been able to jump into 3rd place. So very, very close. However, it was even closer between 1st and 2nd, I think. I think there was only 5 or 10, or a very tiny amount of credits between those 2 positions. So I didn't actually look at the scoring in too much detail. I just knew I had to kill and I had to get fan checks. So I was just concentrating on that and not worrying about how much they were actually worth specifically. But 4th position, pretty solid if you ask me. The Marauders, very, very good team. I think in more experienced hands, they can do even better than I did with them, even though I came pretty close to pulling off something with them. Despite only winning 1 game in the tournament, still almost finishing in the podium places, and the player who finished 3rd, I think, only won 1 game. So, and the winner of the tournament won 2 games, I think, and there were people who had won 3 who finished kind of halfway down the table because of the scoring, rewarding murder and bloodshed and fan checks. So it's a very interesting way to score it. Everyone obviously knew what the scoring was like in advance, so they were able to prepare for that. It's not like it was sprung on everyone on the day after they'd already chosen their team and practiced in a certain way. So no one can claim they were taken by surprise by it. I think it'll probably be tweaked if a system like that is used again. I believe this is the first time implemented at any tournament, anyone that I've ever heard of anyway. But I like the concept of rewarding things other than just winning the game. to encourage some kind of action. Because if you think about the way I played the Z's in the tournaments where I won all my games, including the last Manchester DreadBall Cup, which I won, by the way, then it's not the most exciting playstyle, which is really why I don't play them anymore. Because you're not going to be getting a lot of fan checks. You're not going to be doing that much scoring. You're not going to injure anybody. So playing that way would not be rewarded under the system at all, and you'd have virtually no chance of winning the tournament. Maybe even if you won all 4 of your games, you probably wouldn't be in with a chance. So I can see why it's been put in to make the games a bit more action-packed and encourage you to try out those more exciting moves. But I think it needs a bit of work. I think winning the game should still be rewarded more than it was in this particular scoring system compared to the killing and the fan checks. I think they should be a smaller bonus than they were in this one. But overall, it was a good direction to step in, I think, and it was something a bit different and very, very spicy. And it worked out nicely for my team anyway, because only winning 1 game, but I managed to get lots of kills and fan checks, so it was good for me. Okay, so I'm going to disappear from the screen now, and it's about time to wrap this one up. Hopefully you enjoyed this look at the DreadBall tournament from WoFCon 2019, and all that's left now to do is the Vanguard tournament report, which will be coming very, very shortly indeed. I'm going to set that up immediately after this stream ends. So 3 tournament reports in one day. You can't argue with that high quality content. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. The Twitter, Facebook group. Don't forget, of course, if you enjoy the content on this channel and perhaps you want to see live shows discussing the red hot sizzling juiciness in the wargaming community, don't forget to send me lots of money via Patreon or via Carrier Pigeon or any other means. And I think with that, all that remains to be said is good afternoon out there, whatever you are.